Hey everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 best one-drops ever printed in Magic the Gathering. This video is entirely my opinion, so feel free to disagree with me and argue with me in the comments and argue with each other in the comments. But these are the cards that I think are the best. Now, one drop is a permanent, normally a creature, so keep that in mind. We're not talking about like Brainstorm, Ponder, or Swords of Plowshares, or things like that. We're talking about one drops. Things you can play on turn one that have a huge effect on the game. And we're going to start with number 10, Haywire Might. Haywire Might is a 1 generic mana 1/1. When it dies, you gain 2 life, and you can pay a green and sacrifice Haywire Might to exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. So this is effectively 2 mana artifact and enchantment hate, which is already amazing. It's a body that can block and attack, and it's a card that can be searched out by Karn the Great Creator or more likely Urza Saga. So it's put as a one of in a lot of Karn boards and in the main deck of a lot of Urza Saga decks as just incidental hate, answering so many cards. Haywire Might absolutely deserves this 10th spot, especially with the effect it's had on Eternal formats. In 9th is Esper Sentinel. Esper Sentinel is a 1 white 1/1 human soldier. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. Now, this is mostly played in human tribal decks and Hammer Time, and frankly, some of the most powerful cards in the game are non-creature spells. So being able to play this on turn one, it eating a removal spell, or lining you up that you get to punish your opponent for interacting with you on turn two, and you drawing additional cards, is just incredible. It is a must answer for most decks. 8 and 7 are gonna go sort of together because they're often played together. 8 Goblin Guide and 7 Monastery Swiftspear. Goblin Guide is a 1 mana 2/2 Goblin Scout with haste, which is incredible in aggressive decks. However, whenever Goblin Guide attacks, defending player reveals a top card of their library. If it's a land card, that player puts it into their hand. Now, this deck is played in decks that they don't care if their opponent is playing land drops, because this is going to be behind a bunch of other burn spells and Goblin Guide's best buddy, Monastery Swiftspear, in the 7th slot. Monastery Swiftspear is a 1 mana 1/2 human monk with haste and prowess, meaning whenever you cast a non-creature spell, a creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. And because of cheap burn spells and cantrips in prowess decks, this card is normally only worse than Goblin Guide exactly on turn 1, and then will be attacking for 2, 3, or 4 damage in future turns, which is why it is just a notch above Goblin Guide in these aggressive prowess or burn decks. Number 6 is Death's Shadow. Death's Shadow is a 1 black 13/13 avatar that gets -X/-X, where X is your life total. So this rewards you for dealing damage to yourself. And in Eternal formats, that's pretty easy. You have fetch lands, you have shock lands, you have thought seizes. And in a blue-black, sometimes Grixis tempo deck, Death's Shadow is incredible. Oh, I even forgot about Street Wraith. Like, cycle, lose some life. And then once you reach a low life total, after you sort of controlled what your opponent is doing, put on some pressure with some of your other cards, you get to play a 1 mana 8/8 very often and just close out the game. Number 5 is Mother of Runes. Mother of Runes is a 1 white mana 1/1 human cleric that you can tap and have target creature you control gain protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Now, what makes this card just incredible is that it can protect itself. Now, it's summoning sick when it comes on the battlefield, so it's a must answer the turn it comes out, and then you're not going to be able to answer it with anything short of 2 removal spells, because if you try to remove Mother of Runes when it is not summoning sick and untapped, it'll just give it self-protection. And giving something protection is incredible. It protects them from removal spells, but also makes it unblockable for that color. And so in white aggressive decks, this is a premium card. In the 4th spot is Dragon's Rage Channeler. Dragon's Rage Channeler is a 1/1 human shaman. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Surveil 1, which means look at the top card of your library, and you put that card in your graveyard if you'd like. And it has Delirium. As long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, Dragon's Rage Channeler gets +2/+2, has flying, and attacks each combat if able. Now, Dragon's Rage Channeler, in my opinion, is often better than Delver of Secrets. And here's the reason. You get to pair Dragon's Rage Channeler with cards like Mishra's Bauble, which is a free artifact, which allows you to play a turn 1 Dragon Rage Channeler, play Mishra's Bauble, trigger Dragon Rage Channeler, set up your next turn's draw, sacrifice it, Mishra's Bauble replaces itself on your opponent's upkeep, you get information from your opponent, and now there's an artifact in your graveyard that, in addition to the fetch land that you probably use to cast Dragon Rage Channeler, that's 2 card types. When we untap the next turn and play a sorcery like Ponder or something in Legacy or Preordain or whatever, now there are 3 card types very easily, and we're probably playing some counter magic or lightning bolts as well. So very often it is attacking on turn 3 at the latest, sometimes even turn 2. And every time you cast a non-creature spell, you're setting up your next turn's draws. So within tempo decks, it is incredible. You get cards you don't want to draw off the top of your deck. It's attacking for 3 in the air every turn. But there is a downside where, you know, if they have a big flyer, normally like a Murktide that has to attack, it's awkward. Number 3 is kind of a cop-out. Specifically, I'm really into Birds of Paradise and the Exalted Mana Dorks in Noble Hierarch and Ignoble Hierarch. But these 1-mana cards that are creatures in and of themselves that can block, that also make mana. Not only are they a part of Magic's history, but also they are very, very good and played in every format. Number 2 is Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. Now this is a 1-mana 2/1 Monkey Pirate. Whenever Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card. And it has a dash, which is 1 red, 1 colorless, where you can cast a spell from the dash cost. If you do, it gains haste, but it's returned to your hand from the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So already, this is a 1-mana 2-power creature. Already pretty good. When you hit your opponent with it, you ramp mana by getting a treasure token and get card advantage by being able to cast a card off your opponent's deck. And if you draw this in the mid or late game, you don't have to wait a turn. You can just play it for its dash cost and immediately cash in on that. And that dash cost almost pays for itself by getting that treasure token. And I'll tell you what, if my opponent plays a turn 1 Ragavan and I don't immediately have an answer for it, it feels like Ragavan has death touch to players, which I talk about a lot in my videos with Ragavan, and the game just gets away from you and is so hard to come back. And the number 1 best 1-drop creature, in my humble opinion, is Deathright Shaman. Now let's talk about why I think this is the best 1-drop ever printed. It's Golgari mana, so hybrid Golgari, 1/2, Elf Shaman, and it has 3 abilities. It's essentially a Planeswalker on a stick. You can tap it to exile target land from a graveyard, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So it's a mana dork. You can tap 1 black and tap Deathright Shaman to exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. And you can use 1 green and tap it to exile target creature card from a graveyard. You gain 2 life. This does everything you want to do in nearly every deck that exists, at least in modern and older formats. Number 1, its mana ability, where you exile a land card. If you're playing in these formats, you and your opponent most likely are going to be playing fetch lands. Almost always you get to exile lands and make mana. It also has 2 toughness, which is really, really relevant. And since you're playing it anyway, it is automatically graveyard hate, which is really relevant for like delirium things, really relevant for like reanimator stuff that's happening. And in the deep late game, if none of that stuff is relevant, you can just incidentally use your mana like as a mana dump, gain some life, and kind of kill your opponent without needing to attack. It is so good. It is incredible. And as someone who played Bloodbraid Jund when Deathright Shaman was legal, wow, the card is so good. But there you have it. Those are my top 10 best 1-drops ever printed in Magic the Gathering. What are yours? Did I miss any that you think should have been in the top 10? Let me know down in the comments. And if you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description, especially on Twitter and Discord. Join the communities there. And on Patreon, where I post sideboard guides and other Magic content. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.